Kilauea, this volcano, in general, is a very sacred place. Halemaumau crater, which is right behind me, is even more sacred because that is literally the home of Pele, who is the volcano deity.
Kilauea has long been known to be a marvelous natural laboratory for the study of volcanoes because it is frequently active and very accessible. We have such wonderful science that we're doing here, tremendous insights into how the volcano works and how the lava lake behaves.
The lava lake within Halemaumau, a crater at the summit of Kilauea, is one of the 2 largest lava lakes on Earth. There are few features like this in the world. The island of Hawaii is formed by 5 overlapping volcanoes, with the youngest, Kilauea, to the southeast. Kilauea is one of the world's most active volcanoes. It began growing on the Pacific Ocean floor as far back as 600,000 years ago. Repeated eruptions piled lava flow upon lava flow, building a gently sloped shield volcano that eventually emerged above sea level. Today, Kilauea's summit rises to an elevation of just over 4,000 feet. About 500 years ago, the top of Kilauea collapsed, forming the summit caldera we see today. Within this caldera is Halemaumau crater. For centuries, Hawaiians chronicled an intimate oral history of Kilauea through chants. Written records began with the arrival of missionaries in 1823. For the next 100 years, a nearly continuous lava lake existed at Halemaumau. Its eruptions were a tremendous draw for visitors. When geologist Thomas Jagger first came to Kilauea in 1909, he deemed it the ideal site for the systematic study of volcanic activity. In 1912, he established the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory. 4 years later, the national park was created. Today, about half of Kilauea lies within the boundaries of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park. In 1924, violent explosive eruptions doubled the diameter of Halemaumau to more than 3,000 feet. After the explosions, short-lived lava lakes occurred in Halemaumau until 1934. Then the entire volcano went quiet for 18 years. Lava returned to Halemaumau in 1952, with intermittent eruptions until 1982. The summit of Kilauea was then quiet until 2008.
And by mid-January, the values of sulfur dioxide emissions from Kilauea's summit caldera were higher than we'd seen them in over 20 years. And the numbers kept going up. And the chemistry, the overall chemistry of those gases had changed dramatically. That's when we really knew that something was up.
At 2:58 a.m. on March 19, 2008, Halemaumau awoke with an explosion. As the first summit eruption in almost 26 years, it was exciting. This explosion damaged the national park overlook and ejected rocks large enough to have caused serious injury or death had anyone been on the rim or trail. The next morning, as U.S. Geological Survey scientists drove toward the crater, the crunching of rocky debris beneath the vehicle's tires was one of the first clues that something big had happened. After the explosion, a hole or vent more than 100 feet wide could be seen in the crater wall. Nighttime glow from this vent meant that lava was just below the surface. Over the next few months, the lava level slowly rose higher and the vent grew wider. Views got better and better. Eventually, a lake of molten lava within the vent could be seen from the rim of Halemaumau. In 2015, the lake rose high enough that lava briefly spilled onto the floor of Halemaumau for the first time during the eruption. Today, lava spattering on the lake's surface is occasionally visible from the National Park's Jagger Museum overlook. Millions of visitors have, like Mark Twain, witnessed the splendor of an active lava lake. Since 2008, the active vent within the crater has grown due to collapses of the vent rim. By early 2017, the summit vent was more than 800 feet wide and still growing. Today, the lava lake at the summit of Kilauea is one of 2 ongoing eruptions at the volcano. The other active vent is on Kilauea's East Rift Zone, which has been erupting nearly non-stop since 1983. This is not the first time 2 vents have erupted on Kilauea at the same time. But the duration of these 2 active vents is unmatched in recorded history. Since 1983, the ongoing East Rift Zone eruption has covered more than 54 square miles with lava flows and has destroyed more than 200 structures, including scores of homes. The continuous monitoring of Hawaiian volcanoes that was begun by Jagger in 1912 continues today.
One of the fabulous opportunities we have right now because of an ongoing simultaneous eruption along Kilauea's East Rift Zone and the summit is to look at this connection between the summit and East Rift Zone, the magmatic plumbing connection.
For everyone at HVO, is it an unparalleled opportunity to study the hydraulics of the eruption, of how Kilauea works. It gives us a window into the magma chamber here.
Ika nana noa ike is a Hawaiian proverb that means, by observing, one learns. And that's certainly the case for USGS Hawaiian Volcano Observatory scientists. Observing the physical processes on Kilauea, combined with today's sophisticated monitoring instruments, helps USGS scientists develop a more complete picture of how volcanoes work.
This is a situation where we actually have a large lava lake that's easy to get to, so it's really probably one of the best research opportunities on Earth for understanding lava lake activity.
Many questions about Kilauea volcano's summit eruption are being answered through careful field studies and lab analyses.
We have a network of 10 buckets out here to collect ash that is ejected from the lava lake. The network has existed since 2008. We do that so that we can keep track of how much ash is coming out of the lake, and therefore this gives us some idea as to how gas-rich the lava in the lake is. It's a pretty good haul for the past 24 hours. Also, we're chemically analyzing this ash so that we can tell if there are any chemical changes that are taking place during the eruption.
Gas emitted from the summit vent can tell us a lot about what's happening inside the volcano.
One thing that we know about the emissions of sulfur dioxide gas is that it's tied to the amount of lava that's brought from depth up to atmospheric pressure. And it's that process that occurs when lava is erupted on the surface. So by measuring the amount of sulfur dioxide that's released can tell us how much lava is being erupted on the surface. So the FTIR instrument, we point it down at the lava lake, using the heat off the lava lake, it's actually able to measure the concentration of about 6 or 7 gas species that are actually boiling out of the lake at once. And we're able to measure that about every 5 or 6 seconds. So we're getting a gas analysis every 5 or 6 seconds, which is fantastic.
Kilauea emits more sulfur dioxide than the largest coal-burning power plant in the U.S. These emissions produce volcanic air pollution, known in Hawaii as VOG.
Since 2008, the overall gas emissions from Kilauea essentially tripled. It's a tremendous amount of gas. All of that gas, the sulfur dioxide, irritating sulfur dioxide gas, and the sulfuric acid mist are carried downwind to communities at the southern end of the island, and then the wind patterns carry those emissions up the Kona coast, where they affect people's lives in that area. So this is a rather unique form of volcanic air pollution.
One spectacular feature of the eruption is Pele's hair, delicate strands of volcanic glass that carpet the ground downwind of the lava lake.
Pele's hair forms when gas bubbles in the lava pop or burst, and little droplets fly out, and then they develop a tail on them. The tail is the Pele's hair. Yeah, the Pele's hair is glass because it's formed from the liquid that cools very quickly, so it forms a glass. It's very sharp. There's a very interesting lighting effect that takes place when you're looking into the sun, and the sun is at a fairly low angle. The Pele's hair glistens, like golden, dry wheat or something.
Kilauea's summit eruption provides an opportunity to observe and document the evolution of an active vent. These observations sometimes require the use of cutting-edge tools.
We also use LIDAR in collaboration with researchers on the mainland. And that LIDAR, which is basically a fancy name for laser scanning of the crater, that's able to give us a really precise scan of that crater geometry. So it's a nice 3D model of the vent.
Thermal cameras are another tool used to study the lava lake.
So the lava lake is set within this crater. We actually call the crater, the new crater, the overlook crater because it opened just below the visitor overlook. So in this overlook crater, we have the lava lake. And the lake is set sometimes very deep within the crater, and that crater is often filled with fume. And obviously we want continuous observations of the lake, but the problem is with the naked eye or with normal camera systems, those views can often be obscured by the thick fume. The fume it's variable. It depends on the outgassing rates and also just the wind conditions. But one thing that we found to be very useful is using thermal cameras to monitor that lake and look inside the crater. The benefit of the thermal cameras is it can see through the fume all the time, so it really gives us continuous observations of the lake. And obviously when you're monitoring volcanoes, you want continuous 24/7 observations. So the thermal cameras have proven really effective at being a good monitoring tool.
Thermal cameras are just a part of the sophisticated digital network managed by HVO field engineers. This network delivers a constant stream of data on the volcano's activity.
At a single site, you could have a camera, you could have a gravimeter, you could have a GPS station, you could have a tilt meter. Part of the uniqueness of the network we have monitoring that lake is that it's so close in proximity to the observatory. That allows us to have really high bandwidth radio links. That means that we can afford to do things like stream HD video from the vent back here to HVO.
A lava lake has to be fed by lava that's coming up a conduit. The lava spills into the lake, but then it has to be recirculating and leaving the lake. Otherwise, of course, the lake would fill up and spill out. So there is a kind of convection that is taking place. The lava is coming up at the north end of the lake, flowing to the south end of the lake, and then disappearing down. The reason that it's dropping is that it's losing gas, and it's cooling ever so slightly as it moves across the lake, so it's getting heavier. So it's slightly heavier than the fresher magma that's coming in, lava that's coming in, and so the whole thing circulates.
The lava lake level responds to pressure changes in the summit magma storage system, rising when pressure increases and dropping when it decreases. These changes occur over a matter of hours or days and can shift the lava lake level by over 30 feet. Scientists are looking at the rise and fall of the lava lake and how these changes impact the East Rift Zone eruption.
So Kilauea has two ongoing eruptions, one at the summit and one on the East Rift Zone at Pu'u'o. And we've known that those eruptions are connected in some way. But this new concurrent activity gives us new insight into that connection. One example of that connection is shown by the changing lava levels. The lava lake level at the summit fluctuates commonly. And what we observe at Pu'u'o is there's often a small lava pond there, nothing like the one that we have, the lake that we have at the summit. We have a small lava pond at Pu'u'o. And when we track the level there, it's basically in sync with the summit. And that makes sense because they're both basically fed magma from the summit magma chamber.
Explosive events have occurred throughout this eruption. Why they occur was initially a matter of speculation, but new tools have shed light on their cause.
One of the interesting things about this eruption, and was a bit puzzling at first, is that we've had a handful of these small explosive events. These explosions have thrown volcanic bombs around the vent. So obviously it's not an area that you'd want to be when these explosions occurred. And there was a debate. There were actually several theories proposed. But what we were able to determine based on geologic observations and also installing high-res cameras around the vent to look in the vent is that we were able to determine that these explosions from the lake were actually triggered by large collapses of rock from the crater walls that were impacting the lake. And the lake is very gas-rich, so it's very frothy. And when those when the rocks impacted the lake, then they triggered these explosions.
Many hazards are associated with the Halema'uma'u lava lake.
Because of the ongoing hazards, both from gas emission and potential ballistic impact at the rim, HVO scientists who go into the area to conduct observations and make measurements follow a series of protocols that we've established through dialogue internally, including wearing hard hats, always having a half-face respirator around your neck to help you get out of a high gas concentration area, and also, where possible, wearing fireproof or fire-resistant clothing.
The continuous study of active volcanoes is necessary to issue timely, accurate warnings of volcano hazards.
So we're building on a tremendous body of knowledge that goes back more than a century, using modern and sophisticated tools to answer some of the very basic questions that were asked 100 years ago. One of the important missions of the Hawaiian Volcano Observatory is to investigate and research volcanic processes, really to better understand how volcanoes work. And with that understanding, we can do a better job of advising about the nature and extent of hazards. All of this, in effect, is to help people live safely with volcanoes, which we must do, especially here in the state of Hawaii, where we live on volcanoes.
This is the longest Kilauea summit eruption since 1924, and there are no signs that it's slowing down. but how long it will last remains to be seen.
There's something about lava that just inspires curiosity in humans. There's so many mysteries surrounding these volcanoes. There's so much we don't understand yet about how and why they work. This is like peering back to the beginning of Earth.
The opening up of a second vent at Kilauea was very rare. And the fact that it lasted so long is unprecedented in Kilauea's known history anyway.
I think when people see lava, not just for the first time, but see it at all, it's a rather mesmerizing effect. You're used to seeing the Earth as being something solid, and here is rock, but it's moving, it's liquid rock. And it's very hot, you can see that from the color, and you can feel the heat. And so it's really a unique experience in nature.
So working at HVO is a remarkable experience. If you're a gastrochemist, that's going to put a song in your heart. It's allowing access to vents and fumaroles and one of the largest convecting lava lakes, active lava lakes on the planet.
In the case of Pele, her most famous and obvious body forms are the lava itself. She is the eruption. She is the volcano. She is the lava. She is the rocks after the lava cools. She is all of this tephra that comes out in the plume out here. She's the gases coming out as well. So all of this is Pele. And all of this is part of what is sacred and part of what is to be respected.
The fundamental scientific analysis is both exciting and gives us great insight into how the volcanoes and the Earth works, but it also allows us to help society live safely with volcanoes.
Over that super volcano right there at Yellowstone. Matter of fact, the Grand Teton National Park, they urgent closing of the Grand Teton National Park because a 100-foot fissure opened up right there over the super volcano, which, because the Grand Teton National Park is right next to Yellowstone National Park, but the super volcano covers both parks, and it's even larger than that. And this fissure just opened up right over the super volcano. What does this mean? Let me break in right now and remind everyone, for 10 days, I promised I would let you know that Noble Gold Investments, they're the guys to go to if you're just now getting your 401k or your IRA, or you have a retirement plan that you need to diversify. You don't know what to do with it. Look, I'm not the guy. I'm Pastor Begley. I'm in the cornfields of Indiana. The guy to call is Colin Plume over at noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Let them help you with your 401k or your IRA, or maybe you just got your inheritance or a large insurance settlement. You don't know what to do. Don't know where to put it. They're a Christian company, family owned, great friends of our ministry. So check out Noble Gold Investments. Now, here's what's going on. It's an urgent situation over at Yellowstone, but a 100-foot fissure has sparked an urgent park closure. This 100-foot fissure has opened up in the Grand Teton National Park, not far from, of course, the Yellowstone National Park, and potentially this catastrophic super volcano. It's right there. Matter of fact, this giant crack in the Wyoming-based national park has prompted officials to shut down the area to all tourists in case of landslides. And the 100-foot fissure has prompted the closure of part of the Grand Teton National Park. The Grand Teton National Park said that the Hidden Falls and the Inspiration Point areas are currently closed due to the elevated potential of rock falls, landslides. But it's a whole lot more than that, folks. They got the geologists, they got all the different volcanologists and seismologists. Everybody's over there trying to figure out, what does this mean? Is the super volcano getting ready to erupt? Are we starting to feel it? Or is it, remember, the roads have melted. We have longer steam. There's a hotter, the waters around are scalding. Animals are fleeing the park. The cauldron has risen quite a bit. Look, we're concerned. And with Hawaii continuing as the epicenter of the apocalypse, according to Mary Greeley and others, there's a connection between the Hawaii volcano and what goes on at Yellowstone. The magma is moving, folks. The magma is moving. The lava is leaping. And we are really very concerned. Despite this, it's an urgent situation for them to close this park. Matter of fact, if the Wyoming volcano were to erupt, an estimated 87,000 people would be killed immediately, and 2/3 of the United States would immediately be made uninhabitable. So you have to understand, we're talking about a cataclysmic, catastrophic, near extinction event. Certainly, what would be known as the end of the world for America would have come, and the drastic effects on Canada and the entire Western Hemisphere and the entire weather patterns of the globe. The ash that would fall would just suffocate so many cities and towns and villages, power outages, lack of water, no transportation systems working, a total state of chaos. So this is why they closed the park. This is why they're watching very closely. This is why they're getting involved, because they realize something biblical is going on with the signs of the second coming of Christ.
Hello, my friends. Thank you for joining me at Evolutionary Energy Arts once again. So we're going to start off over in Britain, and we have an earthquake striking near Gatwick Airport. First reported in 250 years, and it shook houses. It wasn't a large earthquake. It's just that it's a very, very unusual area to get one. And you can see it's very, very close to London. And so quite a few people felt it. It was only a 2.6 on the Richter scale. It struck at a depth of about 5 kilometers at 12:30 p.m. And so just a curiosity, really. And we're seeing earthquakes in diverse places for sure. The other thing that we're seeing is really a lot of really, really odd cloud formations. Incredible cloud formations, and this is a massive shelf cloud in Poland on June 25th. And look at that. What it looks like to me, if you guys ever remember any of the old monster movies they used to have, like the Godzilla ones and stuff, it's just like you expect that to be some sort of monster in there, gigantic thing gonna come out. Just so weird and so ominous looking, and we're seeing these just bizarre cloud formations everywhere, along with incredibly intense severe weather, as we've been saying. And so check out this one. This one is labeled as being a mothership supercell, and this is in Kansas. That's just wow. I mean, what an amazing cloud formation there as well. And we know there was a tornado that struck, and a supercell did form. And just look at some of these photos. Just amazing and ominous and intense. So surreal. It looks like they are works of art. Like as if you were going to paint a picture of what the apocalypse would look like. And look at that beautiful shot with the lightning coming down. It's just incredible. Those shades of purple. And I'll let you guys go ahead and play that video. And also they had some severe, some pretty good size hail. And we know there was a lot of damage associated with that storm. Some rivers are so drug polluted, the eels are high on cocaine. Okay? That's crazy, isn't it? Critically endangered eels hyped up on cocaine could have trouble making a 3,700-mile trip to mate and reproduce. New research is warning. And that's how polluted it is in some of our waterways. It's a sad situation. And so while many times I've said I don't believe so much in the man-influenced global warming, I do think that we have had a very horrible influence on the pollution and and the environment in general. And as I've stated many times, we were more like a parasite or a virus really upon the Earth than something living in a symbiotic relationship with it. And all these pharmaceuticals that, you know, get flushed down the toilet one way or another, entering the water supply, and all the drugs, you know, they stick around. They stick around, and they affect everything they come in contact with. It's really a very, very sad situation. And as it says here, the data shows a great presence of illicit drugs and their metabolites in surface waters worldwide. And that was stated by Anna Capaldo, a research biologist at the University of Naples, and the lead author of the study. She adds that water near densely populated cities is even worse, with some of the research showing particularly high concentrations in the Thames River near London's House of Parliament, and the Italian Amo River near Pisa, of the Leaning Tower of Pisa fame. So these poor eels are high on cocaine. And, you know, if you're eating them, or if you're eating fish, you know, that are exposed to these toxins, and you're getting exposed to them too. And it's just this cycle. It's part of the food chain. So is there a new volcano on Hawaii? And this has been brewing in my mind for a while, and this article basically states it. So really what's happening at Fissure 8, which is the most active one, is that really what we have is the formation of a new volcano basically being made. And we could see that there is a building crater, as you can see here, at Fissure 8, and it's a very substantial, prominent feature, at the cone being about 200 feet high. And it's one that, as it says here, is likely to endure for thousands of years unless it's obliterated by later or more violent volcanic activity. And when we're talking about Hawaii and talking about the volcanic activity, there's been a lot of interesting things. And here you can see this was where the earthquake was in the UK, and we had that other unusual earthquake up in Sweden, and there was another one in Sweden a few days earlier as well. And so if we shift over and let's look at what's going on over here in the Pacific, one of the things that hit me was all this activity in Alaska. So much activity in Alaska going on right now, lots of swarming. And very curious that so many of these earthquakes are at 0.0 kilometers. Many of them are very small. But, you know, just wondering what's up with that. Is it a computer glitch going on, or are we trying to indicate some sort of magma flow? 0.1. And we can just see there's like an awful lot of swarming going on right now in Alaska, also in, you know, western U.S., as we've seen before. And there's one over here that caught my eye as well. It's a 1.6, so it's not big, but it's 15 kilometers east-southeast of Soda Springs, Idaho. So this is towards the lower part of the Yellowstone area, and it's at negative 3.3 kilometers. So, you know, that's up around 10,000 feet. And when I look at that position, you know, we could see where it is. You can see Yellowstone National Park up here. So this is kind of how the magma travels, going up from the superplume that starts all the way down by Baja, California, and goes on up through California, through Nevada, through Utah, and up into Idaho, and up into Wyoming. And so this is on that path, and that is at a pretty high level, so just curious as to whether that is some magma flow going on there. And as we know, Yellowstone is something that is always got to be taken seriously. The polar vortex generally sits over the North Pole area. There's one up in the Arctic, and there's one down in the Antarctic. And I watch this Null School site, earth.nullschool.net, on a daily basis. and it's been split for a little while now, at least a week, if not more. And it's a really interesting pattern. And one thing that immediately hits me with the way the pattern is going is that if this thing ever lasted long, you know, like into spring, or if this develops in the spring and hangs around for a while in the spring, I would think we're going to be in serious trouble, because it's actually warmer right now at the geographical North Pole than it is in many parts of Canada and Siberia. And this is a great website where you could check temperatures and everything. It really is fabulous. And it'll give you different layers of the atmosphere and really give you a clue of what's going on here, so you can monitor it yourself. And on this map, the coldest temperatures are usually kind of like a violet color. And so we could see in some of the islands in northern Canada temperatures of 33 degrees below actual temps, 39 degrees below. And this is not, this is quite a ways south of Greenland and south of the actual geographical North Pole, which really is at like 17 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's actually above zero. 21 degrees in some areas here, way up in the actual geographic North Pole. And then we also have extremely cold temperatures over in Russia and in Northern Europe. 26 below, 35 below actual temps, 27 below, 24 below, extending pretty far down. So very interesting, really interesting when you're looking at it. And when you look at some of the temperatures, it's 35 degrees off the coast of Greenland, off the northern coast of Greenland. That makes me worry about melting of the ice sheets up there. Because if a pattern like that continued, it could definitely spell disaster. And it's really so amazing how the warm temps are going so far up. 36 degrees north of Iceland. Way north of Iceland, really. Up into the Arctic Circle. And yet it's way colder, many degrees farther south. So we have some serious change going on here. If this isn't, I'm just a lay person with this, but if this is not an indication of a pole shift, then I don't know. It seems like we are definitely watching serious changes going on. Not Al Gore changes, but real changes. And you just have to wonder how long it's going to stay. Now, when you think about the polar vortex splitting in two, I wonder if there's some sort of geomagnetic reason for this, because the sun will, when it's having a pole shift and its poles are going to flip, sometimes there will be two north poles and two south poles that develop spontaneously. You will have this in the sun, and I wonder if the same holds true for the earth potentially, until equilibrium comes and we find a new balancing point. We know that there's huge changes going on. This is not just one little blip, one little aberration. This is what was talked about from Edgar Cayce and some others from time long ago. And exactly what Edgar Cayce, for one, said it really does look like he's right on the nose with things, and we'll see if that pans out. Most people were thinking that it was going to happen more like around the 90s and 2000s, but it appears that things are really happening now as far as the Earth changes. And again, we have cold spells that are shattering temperature records in Washington right now, Montana, all over the West. And the reason is because of this polar vortex split. So it's right now it's kind of like we have two North Poles. There's one sitting in Siberia and there's one sitting, over Canada. That's what it looks like when you actually look at it. Because when we go to the South Pole, it's unified. And it's summer in the southern hemisphere still. And we have some seriously cold temps going on down there. 53 degrees below, 54 degrees below, almost 55 degrees below zero. So the southern hemisphere doesn't look abnormal, although it does have some intense cold temps going. But the northern hemisphere looks bizarre. And we're seeing it weather-wise. So right now, with that dip that we had in the polar vortex, you got serious records being shattered, and we had it both ways. We had serious warm weather records going on in the East Coast. Absolutely crazy. In Europe, same thing, record-setting cold. Europe's record-setting cold weather just switched directions and is heading for the U.S. now. So get ready. Winter's not over, people. And with the volcanoes going off and the potential for more volcanoes going off, and I would lay money on it, the summer will be probably very cool. And some people are calling for a summer that won't really be a summer. It'll be more like spring and fall temperatures that never quite gets to summer. So we shall see, and that's more for the northern latitudes. We have flooding that's continuing, massive flooding now going on. Now, the Mississippi is going to have tremendous flooding because there's well over 100 tributaries that flow into the Mississippi, and we have tremendous flooding going on. Michigan, Indiana, Wisconsin, as you could see, pretty crazy flooding. And Casey talked about all this too. Tuesday's record warmth long gone, but the region's river flooding persists. And this is Toledo. All through the Midwest. All eyes on the Illinois River. Here it's a major flood, but it doesn't appear to be quite a record yet. Temperatures plummet as record rainfall freezes and floods on Wednesday morning. So this is in the Chicago area. Record flooding and then the deep freeze settling in. So nice deep ice to skate on. So what is going on with the other aspects of this, such as earthquakes? Well, there's a lot going on, and California is swarming. The whole West is swarming. There is so much activity going on out in the western part of the country. Of course, we always have fracking going on in Oklahoma, but tons and tons of earthquakes going on in the western part and also in Alaska. Alaska swarming. Still, we have a lot of the usual places that are experiencing a lot of earthquake activity. Of course, the Ring of Fire. And Greece had several earthquakes this week. I remember seeing at least 4 of them. As the plates there have been active really everywhere. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge, New Zealand, tons of course over in Chile and in Peru and Ecuador and Bolivia. I mean, you name it, there's a lot of activity. There is a volcanic swarm to be aware of going on over in Iceland. That is definitely something to keep our eyes on. There's potential there. And closer to home here in the U.S., we have a lot going on as well. Probably one of the most scary things, at least it's the one that always makes me have a little sick feeling in the pit of my stomach is the Canary Islands, La Palma. And there's been a flurry of earthquakes over there. And, you know, the fear is, and scientists have done, you know, basically peer-reviewed studies that show that if La Palma went, it would cause a huge tsunami that would affect the entire East Coast, and not only that, but also Europe too, everywhere from UK to France and Spain. It would be completely disastrous, you know, and then the East Coast of the US, you know, would just be completely inundated with a mega tsunami that could literally roll miles inland. So it would be one of the scariest scenarios that we could think of, you know, and that's one to definitely keep your eye on. Now, this is off of InfoWars, but there's many other sources talking about the same stuff, so this is for real. And this is saying major eruption imminent, ? Earthquake swarms reported at Mount Hood, Mount Rainier, and Mount St. Helens. All of them. Things are seriously heating up. Scary stuff, but remember, no fear. And we'll get to that a little bit later. And Yellowstone seismic swarm reflects changes in stress along small faults. So Yellowstone is swarming as well. All the area is active. And we know we're going to have a ton of volcanic activity going on. And that is going to increase the cold temperatures. So I'll be honest with you, I definitely do not, well, I don't want to have any fear, but as far as like listing the things I'm concerned about, the mini ice age is not at the top of my list. Really, I'm much more concerned with what's going on with the pole shift. And there are those people that, again, will say pole shift does not mean crustal displacement. It doesn't mean anything more, according to some people, that the magnetic field changes and nothing happens to the actual Earth. But we could see that at the very least you're going to have increased earthquakes and volcanic activity. Whether or not an actual crustal displacement event happens or not, you are going to have tremendous earthquakes and volcanic activity, and that is happening. You know, we could see it. It's really happening. Edgar Casey was an amazing healer, really. I mean, you know, that's the thing that he did, was he would go into his trance and he would tell what was wrong with people miles away. He would say, the subject has pain under the left rib, sensing the spleen overactive, take this herb, it'll help purify the blood. Or, you know, he would know there's something going on with the liver, take this and do this. You know, he could tell exactly what was going on in people's body and give them a natural cure for it in a trance. They discovered during these readings that he could tap into much more than that. And he ended up doing many, many readings talking about the earth changes that were coming. And the earth changes that were coming that he talked about included complete changes in weather patterns all over the globe. Just everything's going to be so different. Pole shift. He did talk about pole shift. Volcanic and earthquake activity will increase. Weather patterns changing are going to cause catastrophic earth changes. So there's a lot of scary in here, for sure. But there is a silver lining too. And the main silver lining is that when we get through all this, he said that the world will be as one. So the world is going to come out of this unified, and then it's not going to be what we had anymore. It's not going to be all this warring and just, you know, fighting amongst ourselves. We're going to come out of this a unified people and a much more cooperative people. And also, he spoke about a new consciousness that was going to arise. However, just like a dirty dog you got to put in the bathtub and wash off, the earth is going to need to cleanse itself. So that is part of what's going on here. The Earth changes are almost like, yeah, a dog shaking the fleas off of itself.